What steps do you think WWE needed to make the Invasion storyline in 2001 better? I don't think there was really a whole lot more they could do with what they had to work with. Had they had access to all of this talent that was sitting out contracts, then it would have been something. But there was no Ric Flair, there was no Goldberg, there was no Nash, there was no Hogan, there was no Sting. Every single major star in WCW was not there. There was no Brett, there was no Piper. You know, any big name that WCW had around during that time didn't come in for this. It was Sean Stasiak and Chuck Palumbo and guys like that. That's why they brought in the ECW guys to try to combine the two to make it worthwhile. The Invasion storyline was a waste, but as far as what they had to work with, I don't know what I would have done better. I would have had to add some WCW guys to it as well. Probably the one thing I would not have done was put Austin on it. I thought that made no sense for Austin to be a part of the WCW side, but they had already turned Austin heel at WrestleMania, so they wanted to keep him a heel. So the only thing they could really do with him, they painted their own selves in a corner for that, because, you know, if you're going to go through with an Austin heel turn in the main event of WrestleMania, even if you realize that that's a failure and you probably shouldn't have done that, you can't scrap it 2 months later. It's too early. You at least have to see it through a little bit. So the only option they really had was to put Austin in the Alliance, because if he stayed on the WWE side, he'd be a babyface. So there's just, oh my God, that situation was so fucked up. So aside from the Austin alliance with the Alliance, I don't know what they could have really done differently with what they had. Now you add those other names in there, you add Sting and Goldberg and guys like that, whole different playing field. We could sit down here, we could book 6 months worth of TV and pay-per-view off of ideas like that. But based on the talent WWE had coming in from WCW that did accept their buyouts and took jobs with WWE, it was all mid-card talent. It was Chavo Guerrero and Billy Kidman and guys like that, and Lance Storm, and, you know, no major stars, you know. Hell, Steiner didn't even come in until 2002, you know. Like, nobody came in. The only guy they really had was DDP and Booker T. That was it. Even Buff Bagwell was in the company for one fucking night. They had nothing. They had no horsemen. They just fucking had nothing. Nothing. Didn't even bring in the announcers. Shivani didn't make the jump. You know, Scott Hudson was there for one night and he left. A couple of referees got jobs. But yeah, they just, they botched that. I think they should have waited. They should have waited till people were available. And maybe even try to relaunch WCW. I don't know why they didn't try to do that. That was the plan. I thought they were going to try to have a Monday Nitro show and Shane would be the owner and they'd have their own TV, their own roster. They could have developed that for a year. I mean, they probably wanted to capitalize on the buyout and the fact that they won the war. They don't want to wait 2 years to do it. But, you know, if looking back, they really didn't have a whole lot of choices. You know, they wanted to make a storyline or an angle out of the buyout. That was huge news. I mean, it was a big deal for those long-running Monday Night Wars to come to an end and for a winner to really be declared. WWE's not going to ignore that for 2 years and wait for these contracts to be bought out. They had to do something. They had to move forward. So they did. And it turned out to suck. Yeah, Rey Mysterio, same thing. He didn't show up until 2002. You know, some of the bigger stars from WCW were there before WCW even closed his doors. You know, Big Show, Chris Jericho, Eddie, Chris, Malenko, Saturn. There's been others. If all those guys were still in WCW, that might have been enough. Bring all those guys in, the matches they could have had. At least that would have been something, especially with the Big Show or with Giant. But they were already in WWE. So yeah, even if WCW was at full strength, they still weren't strong enough to beat WWE because look at what the ratings were doing. You know, WWE was demolishing WCW, even with Goldberg and with Hogan coming in sometimes. They didn't stand a chance. So even full strength 2001 WCW would still not have even put a dent in WWE. Now, had the buyout taken place in 1998, holy shit. Yeah, Benoit would have been definitely on the side of the Alliance, and that's another thing you got to remember about the Invasion is Benoit was hurt. We had no Benoit. He was, I think he had his last match at King of the Ring. The same night that they kicked all that shit off, I think Booker interfered in that match, and then Benoit was out, so he missed the entire Invasion. Had Benoit been healthy, he could have been on Team WCW and helped them a lot. You could have maybe even put Jericho over there in WCW. Oh, and Eddie was gone too. Fuck. There's another one. Eddie was suspended, or he was fired during this time, was he not? I'm pretty sure he was. I'm pretty sure that was during the time that Eddie was not there. I don't remember Eddie during that invasion angle. So had you had Eddie there, you had Chris healthy, that would have helped. WWE would have had Triple H. He tore his quad right before the invasion angle. It would have been really cool to see Triple H involved in that. I mean, he was the one that fired the first shot. Remember DX going to Nitro with the Jeep and all that?